Thank you for all participating in the STC's new online application process. We're very excited that we have joined with CSIU to be able to offer this opportunity. I think it will streamline a lot of the paperwork and different things that need to be taken care of. Anthony, as you all may know, was a former STC employee. He has been part of CSIU for the last year already. So Anthony's going to review the process with you. We're going to stop every so often and ask for questions. This is going to be recorded, so we'll have that opportunity to touch base and be able to look at it. We're going to give you the opportunity to play around in the system for a little bit before we make the applications officially live for the students. Where the applications are concerned, you'll still do your roster template for me and submit that. The only difference is you will not have to be dropping off all of that big lug of paperwork to us, because the majority of everything will be done electronically and completed at that way. Anthony, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Anthony Cartier from the CSIU. As Tracy mentioned, this morning we're going to be going over the new online registration or application process for the upcoming school year for your new students for 22-23. So over the last month or so, we've worked together with the STC staff to release this to you. And as a couple of the points that Tracy mentioned is this will take place of the current application process that you do. We're going to be able to put this online and it's going to give you the ability to remove the paperwork from the process, but also everybody's going to be on the same playing field then. If you have a question about an application, if you need to have something corrected or work with Tracy or a staff member at STC, you guys will be able to see the same information online at the same time to go through any questions. So I am going to get into the process here. If everybody could just confirm to me, or at least somebody down in the chat, that you're able to see my screen.
We can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. So where this process initially started is with a form. So a form was created with the staff here at CSIU and with STC, and that form was turned into a link. The link is what you're going to provide to your students ultimately to complete the application process. And essentially how the flow will go is you provide the link either onto your website or an internal way to students that are interested in applying to the Technology Center. They're going to fill out that link in application. That link is going to then be sent to you as the sending district. You'll be able to view all of the application information that the student and parent entered. You will fill in some of your specific information from a counselor's perspective, and then you will ultimately submit that application on to STC for final processing. So to get into how this is ultimately going to work for you, the first step is to find out where you can see these applications and also the form that you're going to use. So if you see my screen here, you guys are going to log into what's called the CTE portal. If you haven't been provided already, you will be provided soon. The link here at the top of the screen to allow you to come to this screen to put in a username and password to log into the CTE portal. I believe, and Tracy, you can tell me if I'm wrong, I believe your username and password will be identical to what you currently use for your Guru boards. But you'll be able to type in your username and password, and that's going to log you into your CTE portal. So I don't have those available, your username and password, but I do have the ability to log in as one of the districts. So I'm going to come over here and essentially putting your username and password in here is going to be the same as me. And for this presentation, let's work through one of the users we have for Blue Mountain. So when you put in your username and password, you're going to come to this screen here. You're going to be defaulted here to the Applications tab. And this is going to be where any applications that you receive ultimately sit. Now, we will come back to this screen after we go through the process of entering an application, but I did kind of just want to review when you initially log in, you'll be presented with this screen. You'll be defaulted to a tab for applications, and any new applications that you have will sit here. We'll come back to this once we have information, but the next tab I wanted to review here is the Forms tab. On the Forms tab, this is where you have the ability to take the link, which is ultimately the form that the students will fill out when applying to STC. So you can post this onto your website, give it out to parents or students individually that are interested. But essentially what this link is an infinite use link that will take them to the form to fill out, which takes the place of the prior application that they had. Now on the screen, if I click on here, it's going to open up the form and we're going to complete that here. But I did want to let you know that you're also able to preview this at any time. And if we do have users that ultimately would like to put this on their website, we also have an embed feature here that will give perhaps somebody on your tech staff some scripting text here to put it onto their website a little bit easier. Okay, so essentially how I wanted to get started here is I wanted to wear the hats of all parties upon the equation here. So when you first log in here and you take this form, you're going to provide this to the student. So I'm going to click on this link and open the application. I'm going to fill it out as if I was the student or parent. After I fill in the information, I'm going to break for any questions that you may have, and then I'm ultimately going to submit it to you as the sending school counselors. From there, we'll go over the process of what you're responsible for and things that you can do within the portal, and then also how to submit them on to Tracy and the rest of the staff at STC. Okay. So when I click on this link here, what it's going to do is open up a form. And if you note it here, when I use the form for the Blue Mountain School District, when I click that link, it's going to directly take me to a form for Blue Mountain School District. So when I submit this form, it's going into the Blue Mountain School District CTE portal. So you won't have any applications that go between districts. Ultimately, if you provide them with your link, those applications come to your school. Now the form is split into 3 different sections. At the top here, we're going to have a little description and a review of what the students will need to do when filling out the application. It's going to kind of give them a little instruction on what they're able to do and what they should do before submitting the form. The rest of the form is split into 3 different sections. We're going to first ask for household information, then we're going to ask for information based on the student, and then we're going to record any parent or guardian data before ultimately submitting an application onto you as the sending district. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to fill out this application as if I was a student or parent filling out the form. So as I mentioned, when I come down here to household information, I'm going to start filling this in. So the fields here are on the left, and we've given some direction here on the right, unless the field is fairly straightforward in which we don't believe they need any. But here under household information, the first thing we're going to fill in is the student's last name. We did put some notes here to make sure that they're capitalizing, and then also to note to what exactly to put in here. This student last name is what's going to build the household within the system after the application is either accepted or rejected. So for this instance, I'm just going to put in test. It's going to ask me for my household language. It does default to It's going to ask me for a registration date, which is essentially the date in which I'm filling out the application. I have 2 different ways to fill in date fields on the form. I can use the calendar selection tool here and pick today's date. If I don't do it that way, I can also type in the date here using the keypad. Okay, so either one would work fine. Next, I'm going to fill out my physical address. Let's say for this instance, I live at 123. And then here within the street dropdown, I can see all of the streets that are currently within the system. Now, it's likely that the student street is within this dropdown. So let's say I live at East Church Street, but for one reason or another, if my street was not within this dropdown, I can just type over the field and put the street value in that I'd like. So if I live at Test Street, I could just type Test Street in. I'll be able to enter apartment information. I can enter the city here. The city will work identical to the street. So again, I have the drop down here. These are most of the cities within Schuylkill County. But if we don't have one here and as a student lives somewhere else, we can type it in and let's just put in a test city. Your state will default to Pennsylvania, and then you have zip code fields here as well as the country. The zip code here, the first 5 we'll need. The zip 4 is available here, but is not required to be filled out. After that, we have a checkbox here for mailing address, same as physical. Now, for most students, their physical and mailing address is the same, but for some students that may live in more rural areas, they may have a mailing address that is different, a PO box or something of the sort. If that was the case and their mailing address is something different than where they physically live, this checkbox can be unchecked and the address for the mailing can be entered here. If you see here under the mailing address, there is a field to fill in for PO box, but again, this is for the instances where somebody has a mailing address different than physical. If they're both the same, they can keep this box checked and just move forward with the application. And then the last field here within the household data is we're looking for a phone number, which will be the primary phone number for the primary contact in the household. So let's say that's mom and it's her cell phone. So we can put that in here. We'll pick a phone type, house phone or cell, and then we'll be able to type it in here. If there are any extensions or they want to note whether the number is listed or not, they can check those boxes as well. After completing that section, we come down to what you see here as the student information. This part of the form is going to be where the student fills in information about themselves upon submitting the application to you. So again, I'm going to put in some dummy information here. Well, I'll put in my own data. I can put in my first name, my last name. Know when you're filling out the application that the first and the last name are required. They can put in a middle name, but that is not required. You'll fill in the date of birth. Again, typing it in or using the date selection. You'll pick the gender from the dropdown. You'll pick the student's grade level for the 22-23 school year. So let's say it'll be an 11th grader. You'll pick the student's primary language. Again, it will default to English, but all of the PIMS acceptable values are within the dropdown. You'll then select the race or any race values that apply. So within the dropdown here are all of the races the student can be. If they are multiple races, they can select multiple ones from the dropdown. They'll identify whether they are Hispanic or not with the checkbox here. Check means yes, uncheck means no. Their country of birth will be defaulted to the United States, but if the student has a country of birth something other than that, know within the dropdown here that all of these values are available. The student will pick their student district. So if this is a student that is from Blue Mountain, they'll pick Blue Mountain. There's a question regarding parent or guardian active military duty. This is a simple yes or no drop down on whether one of your parents or guardians are actively within the military. So if that's a yes, we'll select yes. If no, we'll select no. Next, we'll move into the program that they're ultimately looking to apply for. We have a question here noting for them to please pick the box of the program type that you are applying for. So at the Technology Center, they can either go for a current technology program, which would be the major supply of your courses, your welding, plumbing, health and careers, things like that. They would click the box here for that. If they're applying for emerging health professionals, which is a senior only class, they'll select the choice for there. And if the student is applying for the diversified occupations, they'll select that one here as well. So most students will select career and technical, but know that the other two options are here if they're filling out an application for a different type of program. After that, we've given them the ability to select their program choices that they would like to choose from moving forward into the Technology Center. So within these dropdowns are all of the programs that are offered at STC. So let's say, for instance, I'm a student and I'm really interested in applying for health careers. If I don't get health careers, I've always had an interest in carpentry. And then ultimately, if I don't get that, I can come down here and let's say criminal justice has always been like an ancillary interest of mine. So I can put that in here. We have two additional questions then here also at the bottom of the student information section where we're asking the student which STC program they're most interested in and then giving an explanation as to why. And then also what career plans you're considering and why. So these are simple paragraph text fields where the student can type in the answer to their question. So let's say that I would like to be a nurse. I can type that in here. And then here under career plans, I can say I would like All right, after filling out the student information section, we're going to move to the parent, guardian, and emergency contact section. This is where the student or the parent, when filling out the application, is going to put in the information about the parent or guardian. We're going to record a name here, and then also note before filling out that if we have multiple parents to add, there is an add button at the top of this section to allow them to duplicate this section of the form to fill in multiple parents. So here, let's put in mom test. We'll then select what contact type we have here. It defaults to student guardian, which is the guardian of the student, but also within the dropdown, they have the ability to select an emergency contact. We did put directions here at the side here that a student guardian, again, is a parent or guardian of the student. An emergency contact is a person to contact in case of an emergency, but it is not a parent or guardian. So just thing to note while filling out the application. Also regarding the parent, we have some checkboxes here for whether they should receive correspondence or whether they are the custodial parent. Again, simple check: on means yes, off means no. We'll select the gender. We'll select the relationship to the student. So if this is the mother, we'll select mother, but there are all of the available options here within the dropdown. There's then some additional fields here for phone number and email address. For phone numbers here, we'll select the type of phone number it is. Let's say it's a home phone. And again, we can just type in some dummy information. If the contact should have multiple phone numbers, you can click the add button. And it's going to produce another phone line for them to put in. So if the mother or the father would like to put in a home phone number and a work phone number, they can do that. If you'd like to remove that phone number, you can simply click the remove button. Same for email address. We'll select our type of email, whether this is home or work, and then we'll type in our email address here. Additional email addresses can be added by clicking the add button. And then the last field here we have is the same as the household address. This field is for parent or guardians that are added to the application that have an address that is potentially different than the student's current physical address. So if we're putting in an application and we want to put in both mom and dad, and perhaps they live in different places, that contact can uncheck this box and fill out the mailing address for the other contact. If both guardians live within the same address, then you can simply keep this checked. But similar to the mailing address above, if the address is something other than the household, you will uncheck that and complete it here. Now, we did put a note on here that before submission to please add at least one parent, guardian, and one emergency contact. And additional contacts can be added by clicking the plus icon. So if I come up here, I did want to show you this. If I click on plus, what it's going to do is duplicate the parent and guardian section, and I'll be able to fill out an additional section for either an emergency contact or another parent that we have on. I can click the remove button. And then ultimately that takes me to the bottom of the form where I can click submit. Now, before I click submit, I would like, if anybody has any questions, so please unmute themselves, and I will go through any questions that you have on the form. But essentially going through here, we'll just do another confirmation that each form that field within the form that we needed to complete is done. And then when we submit the application, we can come down here and click the submit button. If we click the submit button and a field has not been completed that is required with one of these red asterisks, a warning will come up noting for them to fill out the field on the form in which needs to be completed. So a form cannot be submitted without the required information on it.
So everyone, just so you know, one of the reasons we're going to this is so that we can definitely be able to have the correct email addresses for parents, phone numbers, and things like that right from the start. And with our system that we now currently have, we have the ability to email parents, and we've been sending some things out to parents directly through the system. And this is to assure that we would have the absolute correct address and the correct spelling of different things, because as you know, sometimes it's very difficult to read other people's handwriting. So this is to eliminate some of that. The way that we set this up was truly to mimic what the application already is that we've had you fill out before in the past. So a lot of the information is the same.
absolutely. And
On the form, just
sure.
do the students have to choose alternate shops?
So within the program choices that you see here, you'll know that 2 of them are marked as an asterisk. Technically, a student can pick the same program multiple times. So if they're interested in health careers, they can pick it twice. But just know that I assume will not increase their chances here. The third one is not required, but when reviewing the form, we wanted to make sure that we at least had a choice 1 and a choice 2. The third choice is optional.
Tracy, if a student's first choice is full, what I'll usually do is ask them if they're interested in changing their number 2 to number 1, if there's an opening in number 2. How will that work now? Will I just email you directly of that change?
So as Anthony,
Because this would have been submitted already, correct?
it will be submitted to you and it doesn't get released to me until after you go through it. So you would know
Okay.
already in place. So then you would be able to go in and do, Anthony, he could go in and do adjustments, correct?
Correct. And that's the next thing that we'll go through here.
Okay.
So we'll talk about the process a little bit. But when I click submit here, the first thing that's going to happen is an email will go out to any parent or guardian email address that is on the form, as well as a contact at the school if you would like to be included on these type of emails. But essentially we can control the messaging, but it's a confirmation that says your application has been submitted. It doesn't tell them whether they've been accepted or anything like that. But essentially when you fill out a form now online, you'll see it on your phone, you immediately get that email notification that the form has been submitted. Now, when that form has been submitted, we'll go through how you'll see that within your portal, but essentially you'll be opening it up, seeing the same exact data that the student did, and then you can make any adjustments to the form.
So, and again, Joe, as before, you are still going to fill that template out for us. And previously on their applications, if they would have preference 1, preference 2 anyway, and sometimes they were in their second preference.
Right. And we would change them before I gave them to. I just didn't know if we had the ability to go in and alter this. So my question was answered. Thank you.
Yep. And then another thing I wanted to note here, and certainly we'll keep open for any questions that we have before we submit, but on this form, this is what the student and parent sees. We'll discuss it when we open it from your perspective from the sending school counselors, but there are additional fields on this form that are hidden to the parent or guardian, or sorry, the student or the guardian when they're filling out the form. But when you open it up from within your portal, you'll be able to see and complete. Those are things are whether the student has an IP or not, any required uploaded documents, things like that. That will only be viewable from the sending school perspective, not from the student or parent when they're initially filling out the form. So they're on there, they're just essentially hidden. Okay, I'll give it a couple seconds here. Certainly as we go through, if you have questions, I can circle back to anything. But after filling out the form, again, we'll give them directions here at the top on how to fill the form out. The form is split into 3 sections, filling out the household information, the student information, and then also any parent or guardians that they have that they would like to include on the form. And then after all of that's complete, they'll come down here to the bottom and click the submit button. When they click the submit button, what you'll see is that you'll get a note here that congratulations, your application has been submitted. And then that's where the email will go out to the parent or guardian, as well as you as the school contact, if you would like to include your email on it, that an application has been submitted. For you, if you'd like to include that, it also helps you see when applications are within your portal, through email, but also whenever you log in, you'll see any new applications. So what I'm going to do is, since this application was submitted, I'm going to log back in. And what you'll see now is under the applications tab within the CTE portal, I have this application for the one that I just submitted. So we'll go through the process of filling out this application now from the sending school's perspective, but we can also talk a little bit more about this screen. So remember that we reviewed so far the forms tab. This is where you're able to take that infinite use link, which is the form the students and parents will fill out. Once they click submit at the bottom of the form, it will come to you and it will show up here on the applications tab. Now, before we open the form, I kind of want to talk around the periphery of the screen. So you'll be able to check for applications here on multiple years. So as we use this moving forward, you'll be able to check the 22-23 applications next year, and you'll be able to check those moving forward. So after we get a couple years of the online application process through, you'll ultimately be able to check the students that have applied over the course of time. There's also a form drop down here that if we had multiple forms, you'd be able to see them here within the drop down. You can search for forms for a to and from date here. And then you can also search for individual students using the criteria here of first name, last name, or ID number. And then there's a keyword search here. So if I wanted to look for my last name, I can type that in here, pick last name, and then do a search. Also on this screen, you're able to take the information out to Excel. So if I would like to see all of my forms here out into an Excel file, I can click on this Excel icon and it's going to take it out in that format. Now, before I open the application, the last part that I want to talk about, the outside here of the screen, is this drop down here that's currently set to pending. Now, when you first open here, it will open to the applications tab, and this drop down will be set to pending. The reason that is when you first log in, what we'd like you to be able to see is the applications that are new to you. So when you log in here to the application screen and it's set to pending, these are all of the applications that have been sent to you since the last time you logged in. So nothing has been done to it so far. But within the dropdown, we have other options. And essentially how I'd like to explain these is that they're buckets in which the applications can sit in. So when an application is new to me, I'm going to see it here in the pending applications. But after I open up the application and submit it on, it will move to the submitted to CTE bucket. If I reject the application, it will move to the rejected bucket. And then also there are 3 options here for accepted by CTE, rejected by CTE, and then waitlisted by CTE. Those are 3 actions that the staff at STC are able to put onto an application after you submit it to them. And if they accept the application, it will move here, rejected or waitlisted will move to the appropriate bucket. The last one here is the draft bucket. What I like to think about this one is as a work in progress area. So if I open up an application as a sending school counselor and I put in some of the information that I need on the form, but I don't put in all of it, I can essentially save my work and then come back to it. Maybe I need an upload for the form and I don't have it at this time. I can save what I did so far and then come back to it. But if I opened it up and completed a portion of it, it's going to move down to this draft bucket. So if you're ever looking for an application that was submitted and you're not sure where it is, you expect it to be in pending, most likely it's one that got open and is incomplete. So it moves down to the draft for the ones that you still need to work on so far. Okay. If we move to the application itself, you'll get a line item here for each application that's submitted. If you look here, you have first name, last name, ID number, you'll have the grade level. You'll also have information about the application and when it was submitted and when it was last modified. And then you also note that there are 3 here. Essentially what it's going to do is open up a screen in which will allow you to print out the application if you would like to. Give it just a second to load here. So essentially what we have here is the information that was filled out by the student or parent, and it can be printed out using this screen. The next icon here is the edit icon. This is where you're going to click to go into the application that has been submitted to you and fill out your portion of the submitted form. And then this last icon here is the submit button, which after we fill out our portion of the form, we're going to come back. And this button is ultimately going to allow us to do a final review of the document and then ultimately submit it on to STC. So does anybody have questions about this before we open it up from your perspective?
So as we're working on it, we would just click, do we save it after we click the edit?
Correct. So when I click edit here, what it's going to do is open up the form with the same exact information that the student or parent filled out prior to submitting. So you're essentially going to see it again. So this is all of the information that I entered. And then you'll be able to save by using that submit button at the bottom of the form, same that the student or parent did.
All right, so, but like you said, like if we don't complete it or whatever in one sitting, because we're waiting on something else, do we have to save it, or does it automatically save what we've already completed?
You'll save by submitting the form back. So you will need to do that. So if you put in information on here and type it and then just click the X button at the top, that information's not saved. You'll have to come down here and physically click the submit button.
Okay, but it's not being submitted to STC till we hit that final submit button.
Correct.
All right, gotcha. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. I'll just get a little page load error there. Let me open it back up. So when I click on the edit button, what it's going to do is open up the form, and you're going to see it with the information that the student or parent filled in. So when I come down here, I'm going to have the household information section. I can do a quick review, see if something seems off. Maybe somebody misspelled something, or I see something that's not capitalized. I can fill that in here. And then when I come through the form, you'll note that there are some fields here that have been added. So the fields that come in here with a lock icon, if I highlight over it, it will note that the field is viewable to school personnel only. There are a few fields on the form that are only visible to you as the sending school counselor. And when you open up the form from this perspective is the only way that it's visible. So again, the student or parent doesn't see it when they're filling out the form. It's only viewable by you once you open it up through the portal. So the first one we have here within the household information section is the residence type. If you would like to fill something in here other than not specified, you can, but for the STC purposes, we do not need something other than unspecified. So if you would like to keep that value here, you can leave it as not specified and move forward. We'll then move back to the student information section. This is where you'll see the student's name, all of the info that we already filled out. If you need to correct anything here, you can. Also, this is where the question we had is if we need to make the adjustment to what the student's choice is. So if we find out something different than what was submitted, we can pick a different option here. So let's say that health careers wasn't open, so I'm ultimately going to put them in as culinary arts as their first choice. I can make those changes here on the form.
Tracy, is it necessary for us to actually change those? We never used to change them on our application. You know, our spreadsheet was the correct thing.
Actually, I agree with you on that. I would not change what the child's first or second choice is, because I would leave it the way the child has picked their choices to be, because that's sometimes where we end up running into problems, because the student will say, well, that's not what my first choice was. And when we pull the application out, we're like, yeah, this is what it says. So I would like that you would not change the order in which the student put their things in.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And again, that decision, as you said, Tracy, will be made there for the schools. The option is there for you to change it, but if the rule is that we shouldn't, then it certainly does not need to be changed.
I would prefer you do not change it, because this would be better, because then in reality, then you should be going back and change. You should be having all of this rewritten too, where they're what they're most interested in and what their career plans are.
Absolutely. Okay, so as we go through the form here, reviewing the program choices, the answers that they put in for why they're interested, you'll see that at the bottom of the student information section, there are some additional fields that have this lock icon on them, which essentially were absent for the student or parent when they were filling them out, but are now here available for you as the sending district to put in. And now this is the information that you would normally provide to Tracy and the STC staff, but you'll be able to do it all through the same online application that the student filled out. So the first field here is an ID number, and this is the homeschool ID. So we did want to discuss this with you guys on the call. The system has the ability to allow you to record your homeschool's ID number if you would like to. We can ultimately make this field optional if you would like, but if you would want to see the student identified within the portal under their ID number for your school, you can put their number in here. So let's say that as a student, my ID number is 1234. I can enter that here. Okay. And Tracy, I didn't know if you wanted to open that ID number up to any discussion or something you wanted to review after the fact.
Actually, I do want to discuss that now. So I was talking and I was muted, Anthony.
Yeah, no worries.
So the idea behind this was, so if you wanted to go look up your student and you looked up your student's by ID number, you would have that opportunity. Or if you were very savvy with doing stuff, and Anthony, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, and I know Joe Ellen's there, if you can correct me too, if I'm incorrect on this. But if you wanted to take information from your students and pull things out of here in an Excel format, if you had your school district ID number on there, you would be able to match up your students a little bit easier if you were merging Excel documents and things like that. When they do enter STC, CSIU does generate a ID number for them for us here, which is their lunch number, and is also used for other things with us. So I just want to have a conversation. Do you guys think we need that? Do you think you want that, or do you want that as an optional feature? So let's discuss. Anyone?
If you want it, Tracy, we'll put it on there, but
It's up to you. I was hoping it would be helpful for you. If it's not, if you think it's going to be more work that you don't want it, we can have it removed.
Can it just be an optional thing, like something that we don't
Yeah.
have to enter, but you leave it on for people that need it or can use it?
Yep.
We
can
can
do that.
absolutely do that. Yeah, well, we can remove the red asterisk, which would make the field not required. So if somebody wants to use it, great. If not, then they don't have to. But this was a point that we in the review of the application that we weren't sure of, so we wanted to bring it up during the presentation.
So Anthony, duly noted, it's optional.
Will do. So moving forward here, most of these are pretty straightforward, but the next field here is the state ID number. This is where we're going to ask you to enter the student's PA secure ID. So we want the full 10-digit number here. Next, we have a question asking whether the student has an IEP. This is a simple drop down, yes or no. We ask if the student has an IEP, what their primary disability is here. And within the drop down, there are all of the acceptable values for a primary disability. This is optional, obviously, because not all students may have an IEP. Next, we ask whether the student has a 504 plan or not. Simple yes or no. There is also a field here for an IEP or 504 upload. So if the student does qualify for an IEP or a 504, you can upload a copy of their IEP or 504 to be submitted to STC. This is a simple click on the browse button that's going to open up your file explorer here. And then you can pick any document that you have for the student and then double click on it or click and open. And what you'll see is that document will load here to the right into the IEP 504 field. This is not required, but if you would like to provide the IEP, you have a question here for whether the student identifies as ESOL.
Okay,
Yes
wait
or
a
no?
minute, Anthony, hold on a second. So it is, if there is a yes to the student has an IEP or a yes to the student has 504, it is required that you load it in there. So we would prefer that there be no paper IEP sent to us. We would like them all loaded into the system. I just want to make that clear.
Moving forward, we have a question asking you to enter the date in which the student will be entering STC for the upcoming school year. So for your students that are set to start on day 1, that date will be 7/1 of 2022. The only time this would be something different is if you're putting in an application after the school year has started, then the first day with the student would be sometime after the school year start, maybe October 1st or something like that. But for all of your students during the initial application process, we'd like you to put in 7/1 of 2022. After that, we have a residency type. So here from the dropdown, you'll select the residency type for the student. Now, most will be a resident, but if you have any other options here, these are all the PIMS acceptable values for the student's residence. We have a drop down here for selecting the student social studies course for the upcoming year. And then we have the available social studies courses here within the drop down. So if they need American Studies 1, we'll put that here.
What if they don't need a social studies?
Oh, that's a really good point, Joe. I guess, Anthony, we need to put there none.
Sure. We can absolutely add an extra value here that would either be not applicable or, does not require social studies.
Okay, yeah, some of our seniors don't. That's the only reason I was bringing it up. Okay,
No,
thank you.
That's a really good point, Joe, and that's why we needed more eyes on this.
Absolutely. Next here, we have a transcript field. This is where we're going to have you upload the student's transcript. You'll click on the browse button, same as with the IP or 504. That will open up your file explorer on your computer, and you'll be able to pick the document. Now, the documents that I'm adding is just a dummy document. It's literally just a blank Word document, so there's no sort of information being submitted through this form. After that, we have 2 fields here for students that are interested in the EHP program or the Emerging Health Professionals. For that program, there are 2 uploads for references that we would like you to include. The first one being a guidance reference and the second one being a chemistry reference.
So Anthony, if I can answer, there was a question in the chat from Kayla that going forward, then if there's updates to the IEPs, those updates will flow through your special ed department. Your special ed department would send them to our supervisor of special ed, and then they would be uploaded from that point, and they would come to us in that means.
Correct. And yes, just to point out, once the document has been submitted to STC, there's not additional documents that will be uploaded unless a new form is loaded and sent there. So the initial one that goes to STC will have the forms that are required on it. After the EHP reference, which again will only be regarding those students that are interested in emerging health professionals, we have a question asking about suspension days, so they can get an idea of the discipline for the student. This is a simple box where you can push up or down to note the days of suspension that the student may have. If it's 0, that's great, and you can leave it as that. After that, we're asking you to put in the location of residence. Each school has a 4-digit PDE location code, and then we put a list here over to the right to the ones that apply for your school. So if this is one for Blue Mountain, we can type in the code here, 3891, and that's what will be submitted.
So here's a question that I do have for you. Those of you that have opened some of your seats to nativity students, we need to have a discussion on what we're going to do for that PDE code there, because when the students are filling out their applications from nativity, they would then need to be putting in that, whoever's going to submit this to me is going to need to put that correct code in for that district of residence. So I know we've had some Blue Mountain students, we've had some Minersville, some Pottsville, and some Shenandoah Valley students that Liz will just need to be mindful of, that she has to make sure that she is using the right code for the right district.
Tracy, I actually have a question about that. Because I know I have students from nativity students that use my seats, but I never get notified that until I get the roster from you. No one ever contacts me and says, I have a student from nativity looking to use one of your seats. So does nativity still like nativity's counselor would fill this out? I wouldn't see that, right?
Yeah, that was going to be my question too, Tracy, then, is who's going to fill out this counselor form for them?
So that's a good point. And that's,
I'm willing to do that.
I think it needs to be a conversation between Liz and Liz. You need to reach out to those 4 or 5 school districts that you work with on that, to figure out who you think would be most. I personally think it should be the nativity person, because they're going to be filling this information in, but on the flip, they have access to your Google account. And Anthony, I need your help.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So sorry, I just wanted to let you finish your thought there. So what can be done here is either way. So I mean, if a student from Nativity that is originally from Blue Mountain or North Schuylkill or something like that is filling out the form, if the process is that they're going to use their sending school link, so so Blue Mountain's link, that can be done. If we want to, we can also set up a CT portal account for Nativity, where they would provide their students a link, and then they would just have to note here when the counselor's filling it out to use the location of residence code of where the student actually resides. So either can be done. We can provide a way for Nativity to send links out to students that are Nativity students, just with the idea here that the location of residence is still technically the original sending school.
So here's the point, guys. We need to have a conversation then about that. What would you prefer as the school sending schools, the sending schools with the seats? Do you want Nativity's counselor to reach out to you prior to, or do you want her to have her own link? I mean, I think my personal opinion is that I think, Liz, you should be reaching out to those districts and having a conversation with them, because they may not have seats for you to be able to use and things like that. And I think the sending school districts need to know who you're sending, because that could definitely impact their allocations.
That makes sense. I have a running list already of who's interested for next year, so I can reach out to them.
So Melissa and Rachel, what are you guys thinking?
Well, yeah, we need to know as far as seats, but as far as this, I don't know that we could fill out some of this stuff for them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I wouldn't have any information on any of the students at Nativity. Like, they don't go in our system at all, so I wouldn't have any of this information. So I think Liz would still have to fill out the form, but before that, have a conversation with us to know that there are seats available.
Correct.
Okay, so Anthony, we need to set up Nativity to have their own portal
Sure.
part then. So that's something we need to do. And
Would
then,
Marion also need Tracy to be set up?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes. So we'll have to do one
And-
for Marion, one for Nativity. And then with that being said, those counselors will need to reach out to the sending school districts to verify that there is any possibility of seats being available. And then the non-public school counselor then will complete the school part of it once they get approval from the sending district that they could possibly use that seat. Does that sound fair?
Yes.
Tracy, my only question would be the kids that are currently there this semester, since they're already enrolled, like I know Ace from Shenandoah, he was already enrolled. I didn't really do anything with him because he was already handled before I started here. How do they play? Are they, again, this is my first year, so are they already factored into the seats? Like for Rachel, she knows that she has student A, B, and C.
We usually, I'm from Minersville, but the two boys that you have there from Minersville, we usually factor them in as seats already allocated.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Sorry, yeah, I knew you were Minersville. Because Ace is graduating, that's why I referenced you.
Yeah.
So yes, we have the twins again for next year, so you're already factoring them in. Does that go for like Pottsville? Do you guys do that too? Because I have a lot of students from Pottsville normally.
So nobody from Pottsville's on the call, so that's going to be a separate conversation that you need to speak to Cindy about. But yes, she should be factoring those seats in prior to.
Thank you.
Yes, we do that as well. But like I said, I only just know that we have them after, like I'll know that for next year, but I never know that beforehand because no one's ever gotten in touch with me. So I would appreciate if you did, Liz.
Absolutely.
And to be honest, Melissa, this past 2 years have been the first time we've ever really had this amount of students from Nativity, if any. The past 2 years had probably been the most that I've ever had.
Yeah.
Okay, but now we have a plan in place for all of us. We all know nobody that lives from Nativity, Nativity or Marion are not using any seats unless you speak to the sending school district first and go through everything that they need you to do first before seats are used. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
And absolutely. And from a form perspective, just know that this is why we meet, and this is why we wanted to roll it out with you. There will be questions that we need to, iron out. And what we have here on the form is not set in stone. We can make changes if they're needed. And then, as we brought up here with your parochial schools, your schools that are not the original resident schools, it's very easy for us to add an additional CTE portal account for them so that they can fill out these forms. But the last thing that we discussed here was the suspension days being recorded, then the location of residence, which brought us into the previous conversation. But here at the bottom of the student information area, we just have one additional field, which is the educating district. That's always going to be Schuylkill Technology Centers, and you'll select that from the dropdown. Now that does take us to the bottom of the student information student information area. We have the parent or guardian information next, but there's not anything for a counselor to fill out here. Now you could look through, correct anything that you see that might be very off, or add anything if you'd like to. But essentially, when you're reviewing this form, what you're looking for are these fields with the gold lock icons, because that's fields that you are required as a sending district to look at. They're only visible to you. So again, you can do a final review of the form, look at the household data, look at the student information data. We've also pushed all of these fields down to the bottom of the student information section, and then also put your directions in blue. So hopefully that differentiates that between the area that the student filled in. I am going to put upload of my transcript because I see that that's required. And then when I come through here, I'll review, as I mentioned, the parent or guardian information. That I can come down here and click the submit button. Before clicking this, does anybody have any questions about your portion of the form? Now, this is different than what you've done before, but what we found is when we've rolled this out to other schools, that the first couple times you go through an application, it's going to be different. But when you get into the flow of it, we found it's ultimately perhaps easier than the physical filling in or the sending of papers, or as Tracy mentioned before, and I was part of this, sending buckets of documents, in a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot or something like that between the schools. Now you'll be able to see them all online. If you're home working or at school, you guys will all be able to check on the applications at the same time.
Anthony, I have a question.
Yep.
And I know it was like the first thing you said, but so to actually get to this page, will this show up as a tab in our CSIU?
So that connection is not there right now. So there you will use a essentially a website that's going to be provided to you by STC, and I'll go through it here once I submit the form.
Okay.
You can keep that as a bookmark or anything like that, and then you'll use your username and password to log in.
Okay, and then the username and password, is that our current CSIU username password, or will we get a new one?
You will be provided a username and password, which I believe, again, is the same that you use to log into Guru boards, and that's what you use to log in.
Google Reports. I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, so sorry. There's Guru boards that are used by some of your districts to view things like attendance and grades through the system. It's kind of a widget-based dashboard. But Tracy, we have the username and passwords that we'll provide to you out into an email individually so that you can log on to the seat.
So Joey, all of you were given the opportunity to use your Guru boards at the beginning of the school year. There was a video that went out with it. There was trainings that were held in the summer on it. And I did send emails out to all of you with your username and passwords for Guru. And on that Guru board, you're able to see your students' attendance, their progress notes, their
I'll search. I've never gone on it.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that's great to Yeah, that's great to bring up. And I mean, we have everyone here, so these are limited opportunities. So just know that, again, I as a support person here also support the Guru board. So if you guys have questions, essentially what we want to give you the ability to do is see student data when you need to. So outside of making the phone call to STC or requesting something by email, we want to give you the tools to be able to pull attendance grade data on your own whenever you need it.
Okay.
Upon filling out all of these fields here, we'll come down and click the submit button. You'll get the same message that it's been submitted successfully. It does close automatically. But when I come back here, now the application will sit here under pending. If I do a search here, what you'll see is that the entered time has been updated and the modified date. Also, my ID number has been updated. So any of the fields that I filled in that would be applicable here to the headers that I have on the application are back on the form. Now, from this point, I have completed the parts that I need from the sending school perspective, and I can ultimately submit it on to STC. And to do that, I'm going to click on this last icon, which is the submit icon. And if I click on submit here, what you'll see is we have one last opportunity for you to review the application. So we have the form sections here at the top. The drop-down splits it between the student, household, and parent guardian information. Now, you can choose to click through these and look at the information that you have. It's not required. So if you're confident that what you have here is what you need, you can simply come over here, pick the school that you want to send it to, and then click submit to CTE. Clicking submit to CTE does a couple of things. First, and obviously, it sends it on to Tracy and the team there at STC to be able to review the application and then ultimately accept, reject, or waitlist the student. It also will send out an email, which we can control the messaging for, that your application has now been sent to the CTC. So again, the trigger is that the application has been sent to the CTC, but what the message says we can control internally. So you can receive this message as the sending school counselor, but also any parent or guardian on the form that has provided an email will also get the same email. Also on here, if you needed to reject the student for some reason, you can do that here. Maybe the student didn't perform well for the remainder of the year, so they're no longer a candidate. Maybe they moved out of district, so they can no longer come. You can reject the application here. I am going to reject this application at first, just to show you how if you reject the application, it doesn't mean that it's rejected for good. And it will also show you how the application flows through some of the buckets within the CTE portal. So if I come here, pick the school it's being sent to and click reject, it will ask me here if I'm sure if I want to reject the form. I can click yes, and then it will tell me that the application has been successfully rejected. If I come back here to the applications page and I do a search, you'll see that the application is no longer found under pending. But if I drop down and select the rejected option and do a search, I can see that my application is rejected. Now, there might be a couple instances that you have to do that. I reviewed this, poor grades, moving out of district. If a student accidentally puts in a duplicate application, you can reject it. We're rejecting them where the student, performed better in school. I can come back to the submit button. I can pick my district, and then I can submit it onto the CTC.
So Anthony, there is a question in the chat box. If we submit an application and they do not pass the remainder of the year, can we reject the application after it was submitted?
Okay, so two questions here. The first one, that processing, well, I guess, will be an ultimate discussion between STC and the sending schools. Now, you can submit the application at any time. You have the ability to, but if the decision should be made prior to submission to CTC, whether the student is getting into that program, then Tracy, I guess we'll kind of have to have a discussion on when the application should be submitted. If you want them all within your portal, Tracy, at the same time, and then you'll make the decision from there, that's fine. Or if you want to wait to see whether they're actually going in to find the ones that submit it, then we can do that too.
I think that we're going to handle it the way that we've handled it in the past, that you submit it. Tyler, it doesn't take that much for us to be able to then reject somebody, because then it will then go into our we call it a transfer. And then if that kid maybe the following year comes back, we can pull them back in and everything else. So I would prefer that you just submit, and then if we need to take somebody off the roster, we'll take somebody off the roster. And
Tracy, so should we not submit until the due date? Or do you want us to submit them as we get them? My question was like, I won't know until I have all the applications at the due date, who's getting the slots and stuff. So
I
should we
think you
keep them as a draft, or do we submit them and then go in and change them if they're waitlisted or accepted?
I would like you to submit them as you finish your template that you sent to me.
Okay, so in the meantime, though, like if I don't want to wait till the last day to do all that work, if I want to work on it as it's going, would they be saved as a draft then, Anthony?
If you filled out all of your form, all of the areas that you need to, they go back up to pending. But if you leave one of them blank, then they'll stay in draft. So on here, in this drop down, if I complete all of my areas, it will
Yeah.
not go down to draft. It'll come back up here to pending. But if I leave one of them open, not completed, then it will stay down here in draft.
Okay, so I'll keep everything pending, and then the last day that everything's due, then I have to put, I have to hit, do I hit accepted or waitlisted, Tracy, or
You're
submitted?
going to hit where Anthony has it right now, the cursor, that submit button, because that will submit them to me.
And then you decide if they're waitlisted or not, or once you, like, why is the, I guess my question is, why is the waitlist or accepted on there and submit? It's confusing me that all three are on there.
So these options here for accepted by CTE, rejected by CTE, and waitlisted by CTE, these are actions that are done by STC.
Okay.
So the only way they
okay,
move
that
into
makes
those
sense.
buckets is when STC processes the application after you submit it to them.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
So Tracy, you're still going by our list.
Correct. I am going by,
Okay.
that's why you're still going to be filling out the Excel template for me.
Okay.
But the
this is-
applications being, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Oh, but the applications being there are good because if something happens and a student, loses interest or no longer is able to apply, you have, quickly that information here. We can, load another student into the slot and bring them into the school.
Okay.
All right, are we all good so far to that point?
All right, so Anthony, just one more time. So if I fill everything out but don't hit submit, where will I be able to see those kids? Will they be
If you-
under pending?
If you fill everything out and click
But-
submit, they'll
No, if I
stay
don't
here.
hit submit, I'm not allowed to hit submit until March 10th or whatever the final day is. But I don't want to wait until March 9th to go through 30 kids. So like if I get an application March 1st and I fill it out, but I'm not submitting it till March 10th, where will those kids be?
So yeah, if you complete your area of the form, they'll stay here in pending. If you
Pending,
leave,
okay.
if you leave at least one of the fields on here not filled out, it will stay down here in draft.
Okay, so then on like the day that everything's due, like let's just say it's March 10th, or whatever, on March 10th, I need to go to my 30 kids that I have pending and just submit all of them that day. Is that what you want, Tracy?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No, thank you. That's great feedback, and it's certainly appreciated when
Sorry.
sending. No, that's good. I think a lot of times people ask the questions that others may have. They may just not speak about it. So I appreciate that.
And the other thing is that the reason Anthony and I talked about doing this, like already you guys have brought up really good questions for us, because I did not think about the nativity and Marian question, nor did I think about the fact that we need a nun there for social studies, because Blue Mountain and Williams Valley needs that, Tamaqua needs that nun section, and there are occasions as seniors that kids will need none if they're coming to us. And again, just as a reminder, this is only for new applications. Anybody who's been accepted and is currently a student for this year does not have to do this. Just want to make sure that because we do have some brand new counselors that may not know that. So just wanted us to be very much aware of that.
Correct. And I guess just to piggyback on that, this is only for new students, and this is also not for students that have program changes. So if there's program changes from masonry to culinary or something like that, that will be handled outside of the CT portal.
Tracy, did you give us a deadline yet? Or no?
No, I did not. Because
Okay.
what I'm thinking is that we're going to take from today until the 4th to be February 4th for you guys to practice. And then we'll
Okay.
the applications to go live on the 7th. And then everything would be due by I'm going to say March 28th, which would be a Monday.
Okay, so then my other question is, are you gonna shut these off so kids can't do them anymore after that? Or are you gonna leave it open? So we're gonna submit ours on our list and like let people keep doing them for wait lists.
We are going to allow it, as of right now, we decided we were going to allow it to remain open just because if you had you know, kids that just moved into the district and things like that. So we'll allow
Yeah.
it open, but it's
Yeah.
not going to be like, hey, everybody keep applying. It's going to be quiet. It's still open.
See, I can see our kids filling things out later thinking they got in, you know, so we'll have to stress to them the deadline.
Actually, do we get an email when, like what Rachel's saying, if a kid would apply late, would we get like an email notification that, okay, you have a new application on here?
So we can include a single email address for the counselor that would receive the same emails that go out to the parent or guardian that fills out the form. So there are ultimately 3 trigger events in which sends out an email. When the parent or student fills out the application initially and clicks the submit button, an email can be sent to you. So that would be a notification
that would be helpful, I
you
think.
would see.
Yeah,
What we found with some districts is we want to give you the option. So for some CTCs that their sending districts might have a few hundred applications, they've decided that they didn't want to be notified each time. They'll just check it regularly. But sometimes, depending on the district, you know, somebody might want that email, but we can do that and set it up on a by school basis.
Okay, well, more school would like it.
Okay.
Actually, Anthony,
I
I
know
think
you
for
like
this,
it.
I think for the first year, let's do it for everybody because it's
Yeah.
new and until we get into the habit of doing it. So.
Yeah. And then
Michael,
also one
agree
kind
with
of,
me?
yeah,
yeah. And then one kind of, I guess, tip about it, as well as we only have the ability to put one email account on to be notified for the district. So I know some schools might have multiple counselors. If that is the case, may want to speak to somebody in the tech department. If there's a way that they can make a combined like guidance email address that when it's sent out, it goes to multiple contacts, like a combined Gmail or something like that, we can put that in so that multiple people can get a contact at the same time. To as many as you need at the school to be notified of a submission. But as I mentioned, you're going to get an email when the application is first submitted. Also, when you submit the application onto STC, that's where another trigger email will go out. And then after that, there's one of 3 actions that can be taken upon accepting, rejecting, or waitlisting the application, and an email will go out based on those actions as well. Okay. I know we're a little bit after 10 o'clock here. I just kind of wanted to, again, just wrap up what we had here, and then I have another portion that I wanted to review with you. So CTE portal, essentially what you're doing is you're taking your link here from the forms tab. You'll be able to use this, put it onto your website, send it out individually to students or parents, however you would like to have it see fit. I also believe that STC is going to be putting all of your school-specific links onto their website, so there's multiple places for them to apply, either on the STC website or on your individual websites. The student will click on the link, they'll fill out the form, and they'll submit it to you as the sending school. When they do that, the applications will be found here under the Applications tab, and you'll be able to process them through the different buckets of information. Now, I'm going to click back on Submit it to CTE and do a search just to show you that the application that I submitted here is now sitting here. I can check this at any time, print it out, whatever I need to do. But that's essentially the process here for new applications. Now, there is additional information from the CTE portal that I want to show you. On top of the process for new incoming students, the CTE portal also provides you ways to check on your currently enrolled students. So you can check things like attendance, grades, and also log into the student's portal account to see information on that student. Now, I don't want to bring up any information for students that are currently enrolled within your district. So I'm going to hop off of this database and sign in under our training database to show you how that works. But just know that on the students tab here, you can check your currently enrolled students. You'll also be able to check your currently enrolled students' attendance, grades, and progress reports with these other tabs. So give me just one moment here and let me log into our training database.
Tracy, so I have a question. On the old application, we had to submit, oh my God, I can't even think of it. The
PSSA stuff and.
yes, PSSA and the career stuff. Do we not have to do that anymore?
No, I'm gonna eliminate that.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Oh my God,
And
you're
then-
awesome.
and the crowd goes wild. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, here I'm logged into the CT portal. It looks very similar to what we had on the screen before. The only difference is I'm now logged in as Adamsville, which is one of our testing databases. So any of the information that you see in here is just fabricated student data. But I want to show you how within the CTE portal, you're also able to check on your currently enrolled students. So we went through the application and forms tab, but we also have a students tab here. Under the Students tab, what you're going to see is a list of all of your students that are currently enrolled within your district. So this is going to be able to see all of the students that you currently have enrolled here. Now we have quite a few here in our training database, but you can search for these students at the top by using the criteria search here and the keyword. You can export this information out to Excel, and I actually want to do that for you here. So you can see that there is some really good information that comes out on these students when you pull it out to Excel. So yes, and I apologize, it's loading off screen here. So when I put this out to Excel, what I'm able to see is the information that I had on screen. So the student's demographic information, their first name, last name. We have their district ID here. This district ID, as we spoke about earlier, if you put your homeschool ID in for the student, you'll be able to see it here. The CTE ID number is going to be the ID number that STC gives them, but you can see their grade, gender, birth date. As we move across here, you'll also be able to see their class information for the classes that they're enrolled in. And then as we move forward, you'll also be able to see the days that they were enrolled and whether they have an app or not. Now, these numbers here are a little bit skewed. There's a -1 and a 99. When the student did not come through the CTE portal, this information will display as a -1 and a 999. But as we go through a couple cycles here, these numbers will be correct in that whether the student has an application in, so they came through the CTE portal, will be a 1 here, and you'll actually be able to see the days that the student was enrolled within STC. Okay. Also on here, you're able to click on this little ID looking icon to log into the student's portal account. So essentially you're proxy logging in as the student, as if you were them, to be able to see some information on the student. So I'm going to use Melissa Ackerman here in our training database. So when I click on here, what it's going to do is open up a view from the student portal. I can see their profile. I can see the upcoming days at STC or the school district that I'm working with, any announcements for the school, any uploaded document. I can go here to the attendance tab and I'll be able to see attendance information for the student. I'll be able to click on their schedule tab and see the classes that they're scheduled in, their teachers, phone numbers, email addresses to be contacted. We have a discipline tab. We have a transcript tab where you'll be able to see the students' most recently posted transcript. There's a gradebook tab where you can go in and see how the student's performing within gradebook areas. And then there's also a standard-based gradebook, which is going to allow you to see things like the tasks for the students. So this is a task list for our advertising arts design class, but you'll see here are all of the different tasks the student is performing in and what grades they received in them. So broken into marking period 1, 2, 3, 4, and also their final task grade. Anything you do here within the login of the student portal is view only, but you're able to print out a lot of this information that you guys would be able to use. So again, the idea here is that we're giving you tools to be able to check on students' information. If you have upcoming IEP meetings or any other meeting types at the school in which you need to pull data, you can come in and use the CTE portal to find out that data, perhaps without needing to make a phone call or send an email. Okay. Any questions here on the students tab and be able to see information about your currently enrolled students?
Yeah, I have a question for Tracy.
Yes.
Hey, so if a student that's currently at STC takes a test like the NOCD, will we be able to see that on their profile?
Eventually, once they're uploaded.
Okay,
But again, the NOCD is an end of the semester or end of their senior year.
yeah, I was just wondering because the NOCD could be used for Act 158 for like CTE or alternative test pathways. So I didn't know if that we could see that information on there.
You can, but it generally doesn't come, I don't have it loaded until a little bit afterwards because it does take me time because it's all the stuff I need to do with other parts of it. So
Okay,
I know Kevin had asked about it previously too. We do send it out to you with their NOCD scores. You do get an email.
all right, awesome, thank you.
Okay, so that's the student tab here. Also, if you want to be able to pull out information not individually on a student, but more in mass, we do have some additional tabs here that you can check on currently enrolled students. So again, we reviewed the students tab, application and forms. The attendance tab is also here to allow you to check students' attendance that are currently enrolled at your school. When I click on the attendance tab, I have two options here for either daily attendance or attendance summary. That essentially the difference here is able to see just the daily attendance for the student. So how many absences they have, how many tardies they have. The attendance summary is going to give me a larger overview of the student's attendance, what reason they missed, and things like that. So let's first use the daily attendance. I can pick a date range here. I'm just going to go from the beginning of the school year to today's date. And then I'm going to do a search. What you'll see is I have a list of my actively enrolled students. It's going to give me their student name, ID number, again, your homeschool ID if you'd like to use that, their grade, and then it's going to show you their counts of absences and tardies, and then totals here. This information can be taken out to Excel, and you can search for individual students using the keyword search here. Okay. The attendance summary tab, again, that's going to be a summary of but if you would like to bring up the full school year, you can type this information in here. You'll pick your school that it's going for. You can pick homeschool or grade. And you can also use the keyword search here to look for an individual student. So to save on the loading here, I'm going to look up a student I have, Ackerman, and do a search. So what you're going to see now is the individual student. You're going to see a display that's a little more akin to a viewable, not really something you're going to export out to Excel, but you'll be able to see the days in which the student had absent data. So 8/12, 9/1, 11/11. You'll be able to see their attendance based off the periods, but then also their daily attendance here as well. It'll give you a summary of all of the different attendance types they had here. And then there's also a key here at the bottom in case you're unsure of what some of these terms may mean. Okay, but a great place that you can go to if you have an upcoming meeting for a student and you need to pull the data out quick, you can come to this attendance tab, find the student, and pull this out to Excel or print it. Okay, the grades tab, this is where you're able to check for marking period grades for the currently enrolled students. So a good use case of this is, let's say marking period 2 has just ended a couple of days ago, which is true for most schools here in Pennsylvania. If I wanted to be able to pull marking period grades out, I can use the grades tab to do so. So I'm going to click on grades. I'll pick the school that I'm looking for, and then I can do a search. What this is going to give me is my currently enrolled students, their ID, the course that they're in, the course name, staff, but then also here it's going to show me posted marking period grades. Now, this is a training database, so you're going to see a lot of blanks here, but essentially when a teacher posts a marking period grade, you're going to see it here within the column. It's also going to show you a projected final average. And again, like with any screen on here, you can take that out to Excel. So marking period 2 has ended, come here to this screen, export it out to Excel, go to the grade MP2 column, and I'll have all of my marking period 2 grades. Okay, and then very similarly here on the progress report tabs, if this is marking period grades, then the progress report tab is for your progress report periods. I'll again select the school. I can select the school years here from the drop down, search for individual students if I like. But upon searching here, what that's going to do is again give me the student information, the class that they're in, and it's going to show me their progress report grades. So at the end of progress report 1, the student received a 90. At the end of progress report 2, the student received 100. And I do apologize, we don't have a lot of grades here within the system, but also here, if the teacher had posted a comment for the progress report period, you would see them here as well. All right, so I know that was a lot of information to go through in about an hour and a half. I do, again, want to open up to any questions if you guys have them. I can go back in and look at them from the STC's site, logging in there, or if you want me to review anything here on screen, I can. Also, we are going to support this moving forward. As Tracy said, what we would like to do is open up the CTE portal to allow you guys to use it starting even today. We're going to give you a period of time in which you can use it as a sandbox. So we highly suggest you go in, put in dummy applications as students, so you can follow the progress through the student's perspective to your perspective, and then ultimately submitting it forward. Then I would take the next couple of weeks to put those in so that you're comfortable, so you can address it with students. And then what we'll do is we'll clear out all of the applications that you put in. We'll pick a go live date, and then we'll have full, clear, fresh CTE portals for everybody to start using for students.
So Anthony, I did put in the chat box that I am going to, over the weekend, send out, over the weekend or by Monday morning, I will resend all usernames and passwords, since there have been some questions. I will also send the link out to the CTC portal. And then Anthony, the only thing I'm going to need your assistance with is the one for the CTC actual application, because when I go in to look at it, I'm not seeing the pathway for that.
Okay,
We can
let me.
share that.
We can certainly do that. Let me just log in and we'll show you while we're on here. So the link that you're going to provide to the schools to get to the login page is going to be this one here. I'll open it up, but essentially you're going to be going to ctcportal.csiutechnology.org/STC. Tracy will provide you with your username and password. And when you enter them in, that's going to be the same thing as, I have the ability to proxy log in, but that's going to be the same thing that would take you to this page here that we reviewed. The form tab here is always going to give you, as the sending school, the ability to take your school specific link. So if somebody completes the form from this link, it gets sent directly to the Blue Mountain CTE portal. So Tracy, you can certainly send out these school specific links to the districts if you would like, but if you ever need it on the go or anything like that, know that you can pull it here from the forms tab. And any form that is currently published and not expired will be available here.
Anthony, I have a question.
Yep.
All right. So I logged on to Guru on my other computer. I have it up. So when I go in there, will I see a way up, like Tracy said, a pathway to this at CTE portal, or will it be two totally different websites?
They're two different websites for that. They'll be the same
Okay.
username and login, but yep,
I got
there'll
it.
be yeah.
I
There'll be two
didn't know
different.
if I'd go on Guru and be able to then get to the CTE portal, but that won't be the case.
Yeah, that won't be the case currently. Those enhancements have been put into the system, so it's not to fruition. But in the future, for users that do use CSIU outside of just this for the online registration process, we would like to be able to create something that that could speak to it. But right now, they will just be separate logins.
I got you. Cool. Thanks.
Yep.
Right. Anyone else have any other questions for Anthony for this today? Okay.
No, good presentation. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. The only thing I would say here is one thing they usually get a little bit of conversation about is the links. Now, you guys can put this onto your website. Do you guys think that's a good thing to do, a bad thing to do? You guys have any comments on posting these links onto your websites or putting them onto the STC website? What we'd like to do is kind of make it as available as possible. So, I mean, anybody with a connection can go on. Also know that you can fill out these forms with a student in your office if you would like to as well. So, I mean, they can be filled out by the student or parent, away, but you can also, if you bring somebody in, to your office as a guidance counselor, you can click on this link and fill out the form with them and essentially submit it to yourself.
So my plan for you guys is I'm going to put a generic link on the STC website under the applications, which would be the one that opens up and it tells the student to put in their district ID, which would, there's a little, it says like Blue Mountain is BM and things like that. Anthony, we're going to need to fix that because we're going to need to do something with nativity.
Okay, we can fix that, and we can put that generic link in, Tracy. Also, if you would like to, you can just put the school specific links on the website as well. So if you don't want to take them to the generic landing page, you could just put a link for each one of your sending schools on there. So if you're Blue Mountain, click here. If you're North Schuylkill, click here. If you're Pottsville, click here.
Yeah, and I'm going to think about, guys, exactly how I want to set that up. So what I'm going to say is Monday on Monday the 24th is when you can start playing with it on your end. I just want to give it one more day for us to fix, because we do need to go in there and fix about making the homeschool ID optional. We need to add none to the social studies thing. And there might be one or two more other things that we may need to adjust and fix.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll fix it on our side here too. And just know that if something happens that's critical to change on the form, big swinging changes we generally don't make on the form midstream. But if it's something like taking something off as required or adding an option from the dropdown, we can do that mid-cycle. So again, as Tracy mentioned, I'll put in the request to have some of those things that we talked about today done to the form, and we'll certainly have it ready for Monday.
All right, so I thank everybody for being part of this. I am going to stop the recording now. Anthony, if you can stay on with Megan and Peg, I would greatly appreciate it, and myself. But everyone else, have a great weekend, stay warm, and I really appreciate you guys all taking the time to do this with us, and I'm excited for us to move on to the next level.